Today's guest is Laura Cifaldi, medium psychic who has been able to connect with spirits since the age of 4. At that age, she remembered connecting with deceased family members and angels. Growing up as a medium, she kept her feet grounded and which gave her life a new perspective. Also, she had a father in law enforcement, this gift aided him and aided her in detective aspects. In recent years, she started doing readings on family members and friends until a few years ago, she realized her true purpose was in helping those who couldn't help themselves. She started working on missing person cases, homicide cases, etc. She's been able to connect with those who are in comas and in vegetative states and also help solve hit and run cases. She's extremely empathetic and has experienced everything in first person as well as in medical intuitive readings. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yes, it's very nice to have you here. I'm very interested in the subject of the afterlife, of what happens after we leave our body in terms of reincarnation, of coming back into the body, and the whole process of, understanding life, not only in the life itself, but also the afterlife. And you, as a young child, had this gift of understanding intuitively, making contact with people on the other side. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a background of when that happened, if you recall, and what took place.
Sure. I was around, from what I can remember, I was around the age of 4. I would actually see my own angels, and I would communicate with them. And at that time, I didn't know that it was, that it was anything out of the ordinary. I thought everyone could do what I do, basically. And just like, any other child, I had what was deemed as an imaginary friend. And my parents told me later on, and they would joke about it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, the little girl that you would say that you played in the closet with." They're like, "There really was a little girl." I'm like, "Yes, there was really a little girl there." We would play. I don't know if you remember, we had strawberry shortcake, and I would always be strawberry shortcake naturally. And she would always play lemon meringue, and she was a blonde girl. And her and I would sit in my closet for like 4 hours and play. I was around the age of probably 6 or 7.
Wow.
So that was really, the first, recollection. And then shortly after, there was a passing of my neighbor had passed away suddenly. And I had seen her at the foot of my bed, and I really didn't understand why she was there. And we didn't know that she had passed as of yet. She was in an accident. And I remember her standing at the foot of my bed, and she was telling me, "Tell my family that I love them." I mean, I looked like the little boy in Sixth Sense. I had my covers up to here, and I'm going, "Why are you in my room?" And then the next morning, that was when my mom had told me. So that was, I think, the first, one of the first major events that I started kind of putting two and two together. And I never told anyone about it until recently, because I was like, okay, well, that's strange. I couldn't figure it out. So yeah, so that's pretty much when it all started, I guess.
Were there other
Yeah.
friends, other kids that you were able to talk about in terms of that was maybe on that level of saying, do you have any friends? Did you ever refer to that with any of the people you knew?
No, but it's funny though, because when I eventually, when I decided to share my gift, this has been about 15 years now that I've shared my gift with others. I remember some of my childhood friends, messaging me, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, we always knew." I was like, "You did?" They're like, "Yeah, you would say this or you would say that." But I didn't openly share things with people. I don't recall ever doing that, not ever really talking about it with people. It
Right.
was it was very uncomfortable for me, because I was teetering and tug of warring with myself. Am I crazy? Is this real? I wasn't really sure. And a lot of it's interpretation, as I'm sure you know.
Yes,
So I
yes.
couldn't really make sense of things. So sometimes something would happen and I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And then some other times other things would happen and then it didn't make full sense. And I just couldn't put, so
Yeah. Who was
yeah.
when was the first time you told your family that you had this gift?
Well, it's funny because my father and I we talk about it, not so much now, but we were talking about it often because he was the biggest skeptic going, my father. And, I'm a police officer's daughter. So, I would tell him things and he would always kind of poo poo it. And, that doesn't make any sense, or, the first time that I remember mentioning anything to him, I think I was in my 20s, And I remember he was on the couch and he was watching television, and there was something that had popped up. It was some kind of, I don't know, it was some kind of crime, or had something had happened. And it was in passing. I was leaving to go out with my friends, and I'm like, oh, they need to look for a black truck with a license plate of blah, blah, blah. And the girl dropped her earring, and this happened and that happened. I remember him just turning around with his remote, and he's like, what? He's like, how do you know that? I'm like, I don't know. I just know. See you later. So then after that point, he told me later on that he would follow that case, and, little things that I had said would come out months later. And he's like, how did she
Wow.
know that? So he was pretty much the first person that I, basically started saying, and that's sort of how that happened.
Was it usually in the I mean, usually this type of gift runs amongst family members in terms of understanding who in the family may have had this. Was there
Yeah.
any other family member that discussed this or had this type of gift?
Yeah, yes, he's probably gonna kill me for mentioning him, but my younger brother has it as well. So him and I, would talk about it, and he's very uncomfortable with it, and he doesn't like it at all. So even to this day, he gets freaked out. He's like, I don't want to know anything about it. But he's very good, my brother. He's very, very
Yeah.
intuitive, and yeah.
So in other words, you guys could connect with each other and understanding what takes place. And
Yeah, it's funny because, he'll say, he's like, "Do you see the guy over there?" I'm like, "Mm-hmm." He's like, "Tall guy with a hat." Mm-hmm. Black coat. I'm like, mm-hmm. And like we kind of say to each other, it's like, "You see it too?" I'm like, "I see it." He's like, "He's creepy." I'm like, "Ah, just ignore him." It's just like, it's almost like a normal conversation between the two of us.
so interesting, so interesting.
Yeah.
In terms of people having certain gifts, usually, as they say, children have that sense of seeing or communicating with loved
Yeah.
ones who've passed on to begin with, and the veil
Hmm.
eventually closes.
Yeah.
What do you think for you as a person who has this gift that didn't close, and why do you think you were um, not say pushed, you were gently shoved in this direction of doing this work?
I think that for some of us, depending on, what life cycle you're in, like as far as me being an older soul, I just think that my gift is just a little bit more developed, and that's sort of what I feel like. Maybe because I'm an older soul, I hung on to it, or I'm more aware of it.
Right, right,
But I tell people all the time, I'm like, everyone has a level of intuition. It's kind of like our voice. We all could speak, right? We can all sing technically. I know if I could speak for myself, I don't sound like Celine Dion or have a beautiful voice, but I can sing. I could go sing karaoke, but
right,
she
right.
has it to the next level. So it's the same thing. So we're all able to connect. We all have that intuition. Just some people are a little bit more developed, and development comes with, lots and lots of practice, so I've had many lifetimes of practice, and that's sort of how
Right,
that's
right.
the analogy that I use. I don't know if it makes sense, but
Yeah, yeah.
that's how I see it.
So
Yeah.
I've heard the expression, since you're both a medium and a psychic, and you also work in
Hmm.
medical intuition,
Hmm.
that people who are psychic doesn't necessarily mean a person is a medium. And there are people
Hmm.
who are mediums, they say, are usually psychic. They have the skill of using both tools. Would you say that holds true for
Yeah.
you?
For me personally, yes, I believe that. Yes. Yeah, I could see where a lot of my psychic friends, they're not really able to connect with spirit, but then my medium friends are able to see from a psychic perspective, because you receive the information from spirit.
Okay, so if somebody didn't know the difference between a psychic and a medium, maybe
Mhm.
you could tell the audience what the difference is.
So a medium is connecting with those that have crossed, that are on the other side, and a psychic is more about the here and now and looking into the future.
When you're looking in terms of mediumship, when you get an image of a person who's crossed over, what's the imagery that you see? Do you see them in heaven per se, or do you see them in a different realm? What's the imagery that
Oh, it's
comes?
all it's
Yeah,
all different. It's
S-
all different depending on the person.
yeah. So give us an example.
Every um so imagery, like, meaning you want me to describe how I see them?
Okay, so I
Is
have an
that what you
idea.
mean?
Let's work on my one of my relatives,
Okay.
if you can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say my grandmother.
Okay. So grandmother. Okay. So what I'm seeing, so how I'm working this is I'm seeing an older woman, and I'm not seeing her in any sort of a place. I'm just seeing a visual of her. And what they do is they show me specifics. Like she's showing me her necklace. I keep seeing pearls. Like she keeps showing me pearls. So I don't know if there's a pearl connection or anything with that, but that's what she's acknowledging, pearls.
Yeah, and in terms of like a place or the imagery, so you just see the person then communicating with you or showing you those types
Yes.
of.
So they're showing me like little symbols. Sometimes they will speak to me. I had a reading 2 days ago where
Right.
I was doing a lot of channeling. So it was ironically, it was a grandmother figure as well. And I started talking with the woman, and I started saying, you need to go to the doctor. And I started bringing out like the Staten Island accent, and I'm going, you need to go to the doctor. She's like, oh my gosh, you look and sound just like my grandmother right now. So sometimes that happens. I had a group reading last night actually that there was a gentleman there who was a younger man, and he sort of just came. I never had this happen before. He was hysterical. He came into the reading. He had sunglasses on. He's like, "All right, everyone." He's like, "I'm here." He's like, "I'm gonna be like the Ryan Seacrest." He's like, I'm gonna go around and I'm gonna interview everybody. He goes, I'm gonna get this party started. And he started, and he gave me his name, and then he started, and the woman that connected with him, she was like, oh my gosh, that's his personality. He never took his sunglasses off. He was always the life of the party, always dancing, blah, blah, blah. But his full personality was coming out. So that's how I was seeing him. Other times, I have had it where spirit brings me to heaven. I have gone to heaven, numerous times. And every time I go, it's like they show me another little piece of something. So it's another little, it's like just filling in the puzzle just a bit more, just on pulling together what heaven is and what it's like.
Yeah, so
So
yeah, so in terms of give us an example of like a piece of heaven of what that little piece looks like that you see.
the little piece of heaven, what I've seen, it sounds strange, but I'm going to say it like this. Heaven is made up of rainbows. Everything, it's almost like, the perspective they gave me recently. They said, look inside of a prism. It's heaven it looks like you're looking through a prism. And everything it's like shine the light through a prism. That's what heaven looks like. It almost has that feel to it.
Wow.
The rainbows are made up of colors that we do not know. They're colors that we never knew existed. So it's not our typical rainbow colors. The wind is made up of music. So it's like music is the wind. So it's a feel. So just like you feel the wind outside, you feel music. It's very soothing, and it's a constant. I had another reading one time where I was it was a pretty large group reading, and there was a woman there. This is a few years back, and the woman's tulip came through, and I thought that was really odd. I never had that happen before, and I brought up the tulip, and I said, I was getting ready for it to be a symbolic, for another, somebody was giving a tulip or something along those lines, and no, it was the tulip. And she started crying. She's like, you don't understand. This tulip was so sentimental. She's like, I had it for a couple of years. She's like, and it died and I couldn't save it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And the tulip came through and said, all flowers go to heaven.
Wow.
So this was another perspective, flowers and trees, and it's just everything is alive. And um, there are also different levels of heaven, which I've learned, quite recently, which I didn't know that perspective or have that perspective. So there's different levels, and it's almost like you come into this life. We have our lessons that we need to complete. It's like school, right? You go through each grade, and those lessons in that grade prepare you for the next grade, and so on and so forth. So that's how it is. So it's like you come into a life, you complete your lessons, you go to the other side, you go to heaven, and then it's like you're at a certain level, and then you get ready, and then you have more lessons, you come back, and then when you go back to heaven, you bump up another level. So it's like always leveling up. So whether you're on earth or you're in heaven, you're always leveling up. That's my own belief
Yeah,
system.
yeah.
That's my own perspective.
Very interesting.
So,
I watched a movie called No Solar, which is Our Planet. It was a man
mm,
who channeled his friend who passed on, and the person who passed on explained to him all the different levels of where he was at in terms of the energetic vibration that his relatives were at, where they can come to him, but he couldn't go to them. So I assume in
mm,
some capacity, they're looking like the prism would be the different levels of spiritual advancement, maybe, or soul's advancement.
mm.
Um,
Okay, I like
yeah,
that.
it's interesting. I've had dreams of people like I guess maybe preparing for heaven in like in a sauna almost, where they're
Hmm.
like they're like cleaning off, so to speak, in order to depart. The people who've passed on, like relatives that I've seen, have been in this like house, this little sauna with white
Okay.
robes, and then they wake up and I knew those are the ones who passed on anyway, but I get that kind of vision. I've had that vision, or I've flown with people who are ready to pass in my dreams, uh, like flying in the sky, either with them or I don't know, maybe my soul leaves and has that
So
vision
it's
of
almost like you're doing like an astro travel. Yeah, you're like
yeah, it's almost
traveling.
yeah, astral traveling, yes, something to that effect. What's interesting is that I guess each person who is psychic or has uh, a clair feeling towards things, there's one more
Hmm.
dominant than the next. In
Yeah.
terms of either clairsentient, clairaudient, and you have a host of different types of senses that you use, which is so interesting because there are so many that are easier for people to use when it comes to psychic work, but some of them are more difficult to actually attain or feel. Maybe you could just get into which is your more dominant uh, form of sense, if there is one, or it depends on the person when you're working with them.
Yeah, it depends on the person. If I had to pick which one would be more dominant, it would definitely be seeing. More clairvoyant. More clairvoyant, I would say.
Right.
Um, but it's very balanced with all of my readings. So I connected with someone the other day. It was a gentleman, and he was really funny, and I was doing a lot of channeling with him as well. And all of a sudden the whole room just filled up with this bubble. Remember
Yeah,
bubble
of
gum?
course. Yes,
Well,
yes.
bubble yum, and it smelled like watermelon bubble gum, bubble yum. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, I smell watermelon bubble yum. Then I started tasting it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I've been getting a lot of. I always joke around and tell everybody that the taste aspect is my favorite because it's 0 calories. I get to eat all these foods. I'm like, this is great. I'm eating cookies. I'm having cake. So I had that, and yeah, and the woman was like, "Oh my gosh," she's like, "We were literally just talking about this over the holidays. That my brother, it was her brother. She's like, my brother and I, we would always have watermelon bubble yum." She's like, and we were all just kind of reminiscing about it and just talking about it.
When was the
But
first
yeah,
when was the first experience? Is that clairgustance? Is that how you say it? Is that
I don't even know what that
yeah.
is. I
I
don't even
think
know the proper word for that.
okay. So in terms of tasting, do you remember the first time that came about where that like did it change your perspective on the work you were doing? Like to say, wow, how do I taste that? Or just it was just a natural
Yeah,
phenomenon for
no,
you?
it was like a natural. Yeah, and I think in the beginning, I was a little bit more puzzled. Like, why am I tasting this? This tastes so strange. What am I eating? And then I started putting two and two together, and I'm like, oh, I could taste it.
Yeah.
But really, it really is one of my favorites, except for when it's 9 in the morning, and if someone makes me eat a tuna fish sandwich or something, I'm like, oh, good.
How does how
Um,
does how does the work bring satisfaction to you?
the work brings satisfaction to me, just being able to give a voice to those that are on the other side, and to help people and give them clarity, and if there's closure and comfort. And so I would say that just I love being able to help people. And um, I just I'm very empathic, so when I see somebody suffering, I can't do enough. It's like, how do I help them? I there's often times, and I say this all the time, I'm like, I wish I could split myself into 100 different pieces and like go in all different directions. And that was even something that I struggled with in the very beginning when I was, when I first started sharing my gift, because, when somebody would leave, it's like I would hang on to that energy the entire day, and I would find
Right.
myself crying and just, I struggled a bit, in the beginning. And now I'm learning how to kind of, I've learned how to, manage that. But there are times where,
Yeah, of course.
I have a harder time, sort of letting go. I always say, let go, let God. I kind of send them off and, give them to God. But yeah, I would say that it's rewarding in the sense that I feel like this is my purpose and
Yeah, so
this is
many,
what I'm
so
here for.
yeah, so many people are empathic. Usually, they have some type of dark night of the soul in their life where they experience some type of trauma or setback, and some people you become victims of circumstances where they just don't honor the parts of themselves that are more sensitive. Especially for
Hmm.
men, if a man is more sensitive or has more empathy, it doesn't jive too well with his development, especially in adolescence. So
Yeah,
it becomes uh, becomes more of a double-edged sword, having the gift of knowing and feeling. For myself as a child, I remember feeling the energy of people around me and becoming, um, I guess, feeling angry over it because people weren't expressing what I knew they were feeling, so to speak.
yeah,
And I would just wanted them to get to the point and express what they felt rather than just beat around the bush. Um, so I think in terms of being empathetic, it's a great gift to have, but it's also a painful thing to feel because
yeah,
how do you tone it down? How do you understand that you can't help everybody?
yeah. Um, Yeah, it's funny that well, it's not funny, but it makes what you're saying makes sense to me, because I'm even thinking about as a child from my perspective. I remember, I think I was in 3rd grade. I remember I went home daily and I would tell my mom, "My teacher's so mean, my teacher's so mean." And she's like, "Well, what is she doing? What is she saying?" And I couldn't figure it out. I'm like, "I don't know. She's just mean. She's just mean." I ended up finding out years later that, that teacher, she was going through a horrible time in her life. Like, she was, whatever, I don't know if it was like a divorce or someone passed, whatever it was. But I was picking up on that and I couldn't make sense of it. I was feeling something. She was never mean to me. She
Right,
never said a
right.
word to me, but empathically, I was picking up on something was off. And right away, I went to, a negative, like it was something negative. Maybe it had to do with me. But, another aspect of what you just said too, I also feel like I often say being an empath, it's like bittersweet. It it's great, but then it's relatable when you're saying that you felt, growing up. It's almost like it kind of stirs up anger in you or frustration. Because I even find that not so much anymore, but I mean, now I kind of just like blow it off because I see things differently now and I understand things differently. But it's very difficult when you know that somebody doesn't like you, for instance, and they're like, "Hi, how are you?" And then I remember with my ex-husband, I would always say to him, I'm like, "That lady doesn't like me," and he's like, "You think everyone doesn't like you?" And I'm like, "No, no, she doesn't like me. She likes you. It's you." He's like, "It's you." And I'm like, "It's not me. She doesn't. She says hello to you every time and she's very nice to you." I'm like, "I'm telling you, she doesn't like me. She's rolling her eyes. I can feel the eye roll."
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that becomes very frustrating because then it makes you uncomfortable. So I used to always say, I'm like, ignorance is bliss. Like, sometimes I wish I didn't know that they didn't
Yeah,
like
yeah.
me. Sometimes I wish I didn't have this.
Well, I think people view it as a person actually being negative, but I don't think it's negativity because I think, as you said, you feel the energies that are approaching, before they actually approach. It's like the storm before the storm comes, and people say it's beautiful out, it's still sunny out. I don't know what you mean, it's not cloudy out. And then when
Yeah.
and then people think a person's a know-it-all if they know something, or being negative is mostly the attribute that's associated with something that you feel.
Hmm.
And but that strong sense of feeling is something I think is naturally a gift. Being an intuitive sensitive, having the ability to feel what maybe others don't feel, and having that connection to the earth, to the energies of the earth, to the people, to be alive. But it becomes somewhat of a lonely path, I think, to some extent, when people are not on that same energetic vibration or on that level. and closing it off. I know for example, I always tell people, like, certain people who you could tell are sensitive either turn to alcohol or they turn to drugs because they can't man it, they can't understand their sensitivity, or they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah,
And I think,
100%.
yeah, and I think through maturity, and I think through making peace with a person, with oneself, that a person has a better understanding of all aspects of themselves, because we're not just this and we're not just that. We're made up of so much different energies and so many different thoughts. Um, but it's fascinating for me to talk to somebody who has that understanding, because it's such a for me, it seems like such a gift to be able to do this type of work, and it's so
Yeah.
inspiring to be able to help people and to see things for people. But then again, there are people who are frightened, and they're naysayers because of their fear. How do you handle people like that, who either are
You
negative
know,
or don't believe?
people like that, if I always say that you can't be that much of a skeptic if you're sitting in front of me. If you're coming in and you want to talk to me, there's something. You're curious. There's something. You're not completely shut off. The wall isn't there 100%. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I'll acknowledge that and I'll say, like, look, this is what this is. And I just approach it in a gentle way. And you know, I've had, I've had so many situations. I really can't think of any that they all maybe started off, in a negative, maybe just with like this negative disposition and or this,
Yeah.
negative feel about it, and then it always turns positive. And then at the end they're like, "Oh my gosh, I see it now. I understand now." So, um I don't know. I think in the beginning, the way I would, when I dealt with somebody that was maybe skeptical or negative or just didn't believe or poo-pooed, my confidence wasn't really there. And then I know, you have to be confident, but then not let your ego.
Right, right,
So
right.
it's confidence, meaning, I have to, trust myself. So I know in the beginning when I would have them say, "No, you're wrong," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to do this anymore." But I don't, that's sort of what would happen to me in the beginning. I'd kind of pull back. You know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not doing a good job. I'm a bit of a perfectionist too.
Yeah, I know.
So you can tell I'm a perfectionist. So because I'm a perfectionist, I'm like, I have to make sure I do everything 100%. It has to be perfect every single time.
That's
So
exactly what
when I
came
was
to my head is before you just said that to me. I saw you doing everything perfect, 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 perfect.
Yeah. Yep. I have to
Yeah.
do everything perfect all the time. And if I don't, then I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't do a good job. So
Right,
I
right.
always, so in the beginning, it affected me in that sense. So, but now I deal with it, I don't know. I deal with it.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, I'll say it that way because I can't think of any situations where it went, an opposite way, but it always
Yeah.
turns out well. It always goes well.
I think that when you speak about confidence in terms of doing this type of work, I think the inner battle within oneself of, maybe not the imposter syndrome, so to speak, but feeling like, am I really doing this? Am I really that good to be able to give this information? In
Yeah.
terms of, that type of cycle in your mind saying, wait a minute, I'm a human being on this plane, and is this something that not everybody does or understands? And so, how does this really form, and how does this capitulate into some type of action of actually, doing this type of work for people? So, I think when you have that inner battle of ego versus spirit and intuition, and sometimes
Hmm.
they bang heads against each other, and I think, sometimes different voices come out, and I think then the confidence becomes a little shaky. I know that for myself with doing that, but I think the more you do readings, I think the better a person becomes, and the thought of not feeling confident, goes out the door. um, you speak about having solved murder cases, or having the ability
Hmm.
to do that type of work. um, can you talk a little bit about that? Maybe you can give us an example of a
Sure.
case that you worked on. And
Sure. Okay. Let me see a case. Well, you mentioned a hit and run case earlier in
right.
my bio, so that was one of them. the girl, it was, there was a hit and run, and they didn't know, they had no leads, they had no idea what happened with her. And I was referred to the case. Somebody had called me and they said, "Can you think you can help them out?" So then that's what I did. I basically gave them some tips and I said, "This is what I feel happened." And then I continuously connected with her. She ended up being in a coma, and I was giving her family and friends messages while she was in a coma. They ended up resolving the case, and that's basically that case. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to make
yeah,
this
I
little
understand. How did the information come to you? Like,
Oh, so okay, so with cases, I experience everything in first person. So when I just did a case the other okay, I just worked on a case the other day. So I'll give you this example. So I was um they didn't really know what happened. They didn't tell me anything. The family, it was a family member that came to me and they said, "Look, this is a cold case." They showed me the person's picture and then they didn't give me any information, and basically I started going through it in first person. So I was crawling on my floor in my office and I'm like looking around and I'm getting all different viewpoints, and I'm like, I'm on a street, and then I looked at the street number. I'm like, I'm on, you 21st Ave. There's a red house in front of me. There's a car that just pulled up. There's three people in the car, and I'm looking, I'm going like this, and I'm looking inside. I'm like, the car's tinted, the car is black. So I'm looking at it's almost like I have a camera and I'm looking at all the different little
wow.
elements of what's going on, and I'm looking around, and then I'm looking, and then I'm zooming in, and I'm like, okay, on the right hand side there's a building. It looks like a little cafe, and it has a security camera. You need to check the security camera. Then I'm looking in on the dashboard, and so that's basically how that works. So I'm experiencing it in first person. I worked on another case where a woman was murdered, and I was her in that moment. I became her. So I was doing everything she was doing. I saw the perpetrator come and I felt him. So I feel everything that's happening, which isn't really pleasant. I feel everything and I go through all the motions when, after I'm trying to find the best way to deliver it. After everything was finished and he did what he did, I then became him, and now I saw where I was walking, and then I saw myself get into a car. And now while I'm doing all this, I'm trying to look around for little evidence. And like when he opened the car door, I could hear that it squeaked. So I knew it was an older car. And then I wanted to see what direction he was going in. So that's basically how that is. So
Amazing. That's so interesting. Like,
yeah.
in terms of, is it energetically draining to do that type of work? I mean, it's reward.
Yeah. It's very draining. That it's very, very hard. I remember when I first started that journey, and I decided, I'm like, no, this is what I'm doing. I want to help these victims and I want to help these families and I want to give them a voice, and they need justice, whatever that is, closure. Um, I had another medium friend of mine. He looked at me and he said, if you travel down that route, he goes, you'll be done in 5 years. He's like, you won't be able to use your gift anymore. He's like, it's very, very, very draining. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, you could go that route, or you could go the other route and help and just stick with families and just help families and people. And he goes, but the crime aspect, he's like, it's really going to be taxing on you, Laura. And I sat with it for a while, but I just keep getting pulled back, and I'm like just crossing my fingers. I'm like, please let me keep helping these families. So it's
Yeah.
been a while now. So but it is very taxing. It's, what it is, it's going through the motions of what they go through is very, it's traumatic in a sense,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
because I'm feeling everything that they're feeling, and I'm living through that. So then and then when I'm pulled out of it, and then I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this person went through that, and so yeah. But
Yeah, do you feel the reward of it? I mean, in terms of like when you communicate with spirit, do you hear any like support from the spirit world of doing the work? Do you have any
yeah,
communication?
Yeah, they do. They send me feathers often. That's their way of saying thank you to me. I receive feathers. Even the people that I'm helping, they're just very grateful and they're just like, thank you so much, and they sort of give me like a spiritual hug. I feel them. And so that for me. And then just, even with the families. So it is rewarding. It's for me, it's worth it. It is, I mean,
Yeah,
in every
absolutely.
every sense,
Well,
you know.
you've been gifted with like an extra sensory, you're like a lighthouse that receives the information from the spirit world. It's interesting because some people probably desire to be able to do this work, um,
Mhm.
and have this, the gift. They may not know about the um, undercurrents that exist in their world and have this
Yeah.
ability to do the work. What would you suggest, or if somebody's interested in doing psychic or mediumship, if they have these abilities, what would you suggest they do? Go to a school, take classes?
I definitely feel reading. I haven't taken any classes myself, which I'm definitely open to,
Right.
Reading definitely helps. And then I think it's just a matter of just taking the plunge, like just doing it. Do it for your family, your friends. There's always going to be something that you don't know about a person. I don't care if you've known the person for 50 years, you're with them every day, you know everything about everything, you talk to them all the time. There's going to be something that there's no way that you would know. And that'll be a validation. And then that'll kind of help build on your confidence. So that's what I would suggest. But I mean, schooling and classes, I
Yeah, yeah.
definitely, I'm not against that. I mean, I think school is great.
Yeah, but
Education is,
there are people like yourself and others who have the gift of receiving and perceiving the information and actually turning the imagery and the senses that you use into solid information that actually helps yourself, helps
mhm,
clients, and helps, in terms of, law enforcement, in terms of the work you do. I've run into people as well who've had the same type of thing. I guess when you're on that same vibrational level of thinking about the same things, you'll run into people who are doing the same
yep,
type of work. And
connect.
I've
Hmm.
connected to so many people that way, and I'm very drawn to that. I always find that level of understanding to be of a higher level of connection than just everyday communication and gossip and drama and everything else that exists
Hmm.
on this plane. So it kind of drains me when I hear stuff spoken about that everybody will say eventually, like, come on, you're a human being, this is what people do. And I go, yeah, this is what people do. But sometimes internally, I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy hearing the stuff that when people tell the same story over and over again to remain stuck and not evolve or change. And it becomes, I guess, a lonely path, so to speak, when you're doing the work to evolve and, others are naturally on their own timeline of going where they're supposed to go. I spoke to you earlier a little bit about myself in terms of having taught for about 30 years physical education and in a
Hmm.
place now where I do Akashic record readings, I do healing work. And as we spoke a little bit before, sometimes you feel like you do the work and you're good at it, but then again, your ego will get in the way and you'll actually question yourself: Is this what I'm supposed to be doing, or am I good at this? And uh, naturally, at the end of the day, the my spiritual side wins out, and I feel connected to that. But then again, I'm try to write a book, or I've
Hmm.
heard and desire to write a book, and I'm a little stuck. I'm stuck. So I'm like saying, where do I go? I hear from the spirit world patience. Maybe,
Because it's not the right time yet.
yeah,
That's why. So it's not that you're stuck, it's just
yeah,
not the right time. I feel like we're always evolving. So I feel like that's the same with you. You're just kind of, you've hit that plateau sort
yes.
of, and now you're getting ready to go to that next level. You're evolving again. Do you find yourself, do you do anything with like the chakras or anything? Have you done any work with that?
Yes, yes,
Because
yes.
do you do that with people? Do you
I
work
do.
on their chakras?
I do. Yes.
I feel like I keep hearing that there's something with chakras. And as a matter of fact, I keep going to, I'm not so familiar with chakras. I don't
Sacral,
know a lot about it. So
sacral chakra.
this one. This one, like, I keep going here on you. I almost feel like there's a heaviness here. So I don't know if you're having like a lot of stomach issues or there's stomach stuff going on with you. I just feel like there's a little bit of heaviness there. Do you ever do it on yourself?
I do it
Or
on
I just,
myself, but I feel it. I've been feeling it recently. Yes.
it's
Yeah.
right here. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does this
Yeah.
resonate?
Yeah. Well, I had it. I had it last night. I had actually gas pains in that area.
Okay, that's why. Because I keep like, as soon as
Yes.
I got on
Yes.
the phone with you, I was like feeling like a lot of
Yes.
pressure here. So I feel
Last
like
night.
this is almost like a block. So I feel like
But
it's
it is, but it is,
physical, but
but it
then
is an energetic block because it relates to sacral chakra, relates to family and stuff. And so, uh, I was divorced 20 years. My relationship, my children is on and off. And so that connection towards family and feeling connected has been like a little shattered. And so I
mm,
know that chakra is the chakra I work on. I have a hard time with it because it's my, yeah, it's a little bit difficult for me to actually want to even go to that area, to be honest with you.
mm. I just feel like, can I say stuff?
Sure,
Is that okay?
sure.
I want to get your permission. I don't want to just
Yes,
start saying
yes.
stuff and you're like, oh no, you can't, don't say that. It's almost, I'm gonna try to say it this way. Um, it feels like with you, I feel like there's a tremendous amount of, and the word I'm hearing is guilt. I feel like there's some sort of guilt, like you're owning something. I don't know if you've ever seen it this way, and not that there's any, then there's nothing to be guilty about,
Yeah, yeah,
but
I
it's like
understand.
you blame yourself, and I feel like you're owning things. So maybe this is something that you need to kind of dig deeper into, like within yourself. And I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
think that you've done that fully. I feel like you've done a lot of work on yourself.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to that point. I understand what you're saying.
Do you
That's
understand what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, I do.
I just feel like that's when you're gonna go to the next, like that's when you're gonna kick it to the next level. That's when you're gonna go to the next level.
All right, so
Like it's like when
how am
you,
I going to clear it?
I almost feel like you need to meditate and you need to almost like, I feel like you need to like mentally like go
Go it,
into that
go. Yeah,
area.
yeah, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well,
Like,
yeah. I'll tell you. See, I have two children, so I have, for me, I know that that area represents the family and children, and it represents it represents the creativity aspect as well. So that creativity is blocked, I know, because that's the chakra of creativity. And my daughter and the communication is off, and trying to be in her life, and her pulling back, and so different aspects of that create like almost a tug of war inside of myself. Uh, and yeah,
you know what, I don't mean to interrupt you because now I'm starting to get stuff. You
yes.
know what I feel like you need to do?
Go
Did
ahead.
you ever go, I feel like going one by one. Did you ever go into your daughter's past lives? Did you ever rewind time with her and see the connection between you and her in a past life? Because I feel like it's stuff from this present life between the two of you, but then I also feel like it's residual stuff that wasn't resolved from a past life. So it's almost like rewinding and going into one of her past lives to kind of see like the connection that you and her have and then see the patterns in this life, and it'll kind of give you more of an understanding, and then maybe then you'll be able to kind of go inside of yourself and just like let that go
Okay.
and find that, and I'm using the term forgiveness loosely because I don't feel it's anything to forgive, but it's on your,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
your it's your, it's how you see it. It's almost like finding the forgiveness, and it's sort of like being able to like let that go. And honestly, I feel like when you do let that go and you are able to address this, I actually think that there's going to be a change in your relationship. It's almost like this is whatever
Past
this
life.
is, it's like holding, yeah, it's holding back your relationship from moving forward in this life. So once you end up clearing this out, you'll be able to move forward, and the energy around your relationship with her will actually get better, and
Okay.
it'll start to progress and
It's
evolve.
interesting.
It'll
It's
get
interesting.
better.
It's interesting you say that because when in my relationship to her, if I refer to her, I would say my sister.
Yeah. So, see, so that's something to look into. So, there's maybe a sister brother connection, a sibling connection in a past life. So, it's like really digging deep. Like, was there something going on between the two of you? I almost feel like when I'm looking at it, like when I'm rewinding and I'm looking at it, it almost feels like you and her were on different pages, and it was almost like you were even at that time trying to help her and she just wouldn't listen, and there was a lot of resentment there, but that's from like a past life. So I feel like there was
Yes,
resentment
yes,
built up
yes, yes, yes,
in
yes.
that life, and it was almost like you were trying to help her or guide her, whatever that is, and then maybe it kind of carried over into this life, and maybe there's like that subconscious, you know um resentment or something, and you're
Well,
recognizing that.
yeah, I think so. I think if just to we could, in terms of trying to help and not as we discussed, people obviously are on their own timeline of finding their path and doing their own things. I think when like maybe having that insight of knowing something and feeling guilty that the person is not taking that advice for something that you just said, because I
Hmm.
reverted back to actually the past life as a sister of mine. And I
Hmm.
think about it now during the war years, something to do with that, because I've actually played that in my head recently when I was driving. I said to myself, something maybe a past life, something to this, but I couldn't. But now I think you confirmed a little bit of something that I'm going to look into a little more.
Yeah. I think this is good. This will give you that clarity. And then going forward, it'll help start to chip away or help clear up some of this heaviness here. So I think that that's what's happening right now. Once all this is resolved, then I feel as though this, I wouldn't say it's a block, but you'll be ready. Everything with your book and everything else will kind of just fall into place. But this is all part of what you need to do right now. You need to focus on yourself. The book right now would serve as a distraction, and
Yeah.
that's not
Okay.
meant to be in a negative way. You need to
Yeah.
focus on yourself right now.
Okay. All right. That's good advice. Thank you for that. Um, yeah. So we move forward in terms of from this particular subject, where do you see your particular career going in terms of the work you're doing? Um,
My career, I feel like I don't know. I see it evolving. I definitely feel myself evolving. I think what I'm doing, and I'm getting a lot more past life stuff in a lot of my readings, and it's sort of I always, what I do, I always compare it, or I always say, I give the analogy of how a therapist, a psychologist, looks to people's childhoods to kind of bring understanding to the present, right? So they look, in their past. So, okay, what was the trigger,
right.
when you were younger that kind of led up to now and blah, blah, blah. So I feel like I've been doing that, but with past life stuff. It's like, okay, what are the patterns? What are
Right.
the
Right.
triggers? Like that's where I'm going.
Right.
So I feel like where I'm headed, it's sort of I wouldn't say like life coaching, but it's almost like trying to make sense and healing old wounds, like not from this life so much. I mean,
Right.
from
Right.
this life,
Right.
but then even like past life stuff. So
Yeah.
that's where I feel like I'm kind of evolving into, because it's almost like soul work. That's almost where I feel like I'm going. I want to do
Right.
more like soul work.
Well, I think as we discussed earlier in terms of doing the Akashic records, I think when I'm doing a reading for somebody, I always see the childhood and I always see a past life
Mm,
connection to that. I'll see like a time period. And then it relates to people who confirm, oh, I had that interest in Egypt and I haven't, all that stuff. So I
mm.
think, people don't recognize, I think, the inner child, but that then before the inner child that we dissolve or we push aside to become grown up and to like cut parts of ourselves off in order to forget. But then again, there's the parts before that, as you just mentioned, which are the past lives. And I think they're so important to connect all the pieces since we're an evolving soul. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can, can I don't mean to interrupt you, but can I tell you one more thing because I'm seeing something with you?
Yeah.
You have, I don't know if you know this, but you have a Native American guide that's around you. He feels like a medicine man,
Yes.
and he's actually standing on to your left. Like, I don't know if it's backwards, whatever, but yeah, that way. He's standing over there. I could see him, and
This
he
side?
has like this, yeah, that side. That's where
Okay.
he's standing right now. So he is there, and he has this very medicinal feel to him. He's telling me to tell you. So I don't know. I don't really know much about this. I'm just giving you the message. But he's telling me that you need to do more sound or drumming, like to center yourself or like to ground yourself. Like it's almost like sounds. Like you need to do drumming or
I
listen
drum.
to
Okay, I
drumming
do
sound.
drum. I drum.
Oh, you do? Okay. All
Excellent.
right. So you need to do more of that. He told me to tell you.
Okay. That's, by the
You
way, I communicate with the medicine man who I've been told, actually I had a connection to the Lakota Indians. And every
ah.
time I see somebody, it's Lakota tattoo, a guy with a Lakota. And my friend who I grew up with, who was adopted, and his name is Jesse Eisenpress, but he told me
Mhm.
recently, I go, Jess, I said, I'm interested in Lakota. He goes, I am Lakota.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
and the Native American I communicate with through another woman told me the same thing. There's a certain symbol, the infinity symbol I make on any area
Uh,
of my body that's bothering me. And it usually, the pain dissipates from that particular symbol and communicating with him. So I know I communicate with him. The last person I did a reading for told me, there's a Native American man over your shoulder. And I find feathers everywhere. And I
yeah,
was
feathers are a
reading
big
about
thing.
eagles. I saw eagle in New Jersey fly right over the Garden State. An eagle flew right over my car, a bald eagle. So it's
Oh,
been
that's awesome.
a deep connection with the spirit. But that's okay. So I'll be drumming more. I have my
Yeah,
drum
he said
actually.
yeah, he said do more drumming. Are you familiar with Joe Dispenza?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to, I'm like, I just feel like you and him are a perfect fit. I love him. I think he's amazing. I just feel like there's a lot of energetic for me, my
Yes.
feeling, energetic similarities with you and him.
Yeah,
I mean, you're your own person, but I
yes,
just
yes,
feel like
yes.
there's a lot of energetic similarities
Yeah, I
between the
understand
two of
that.
you.
Well, I'm on my path as an individual, and I'm sure you know, I'm I'm always seeking and I'm looking to find information to evolve. And I think,
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Now this is what happens. You see, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm like,
go
oh
ahead.
wait, no, I have something else to tell you. I'm sorry. Um, so with what you're doing now, do you also do you ever take the person back or have them almost do like a meditative state where they go backwards like and go into their past lives? Because I feel like I see that with you. So I don't know if maybe if you're not doing that now, it's like I see that being the next step. It's like you're going to take a person back. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. You're going to take them back and then oh, this is how you're going to help them heal because it's like you're gonna take them back in that moment and then have them recognize it and then say, "I'm gonna make a change," or whatever it is. You're gonna have them heal while they're in their past life regression almost.
Wow, 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 wow.
Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm sorry. And maybe that's why they kind of prefaced it with like the Joe Dispenza idea. Like it's like the mind body connection, like going inside, but it's not so much going inside of yourself. I mean, it's going inside of yourself, but it's like going I'm trying to
Yeah, I see it.
interpret
I
this.
see what you're telling me.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Do you
Yeah,
do
yeah.
any of that now or you're not doing
Well,
that
I
now?
do. When I do a reading, I see the person's childhood, so I see the exact image of what caused the trauma and stress, and so maybe from that point, I could retell the story and rewrite the story in that moment of how they
Re, re
themselves, how they can change the
have them
situation.
no, but yes, but the next level is
W-
you getting them to visualize it and then tell you what they see and what they're
Oh,
experiencing and feel. Do you understand?
oh,
And
okay.
then have them go into that moment. Let's say, I'm going to make this up. Let's just say you have a woman and she was abused in a past life and she's under a table, she's crying and she's, scared and the abuser is running around looking for her and she's frightened. It's it's almost like, okay, well, what do you see? Explain where you are, and then she's going through it. So it's like a regression session, but now, you're taking charge. You're saying, okay, let's say her name is Anne. Okay, letting little Anne know that big Anne is here. Like I'm here now. Like I'm protecting you. You don't have to worry about him hurting you anymore. You know, you're safe. I
Right.
have
Okay.
you. You
Okay.
understand?
Well,
So
I
it's
actually I do that. I do
okay.
that. That's what I do. I tell the older child to communicate with the younger child to nurture the younger child. That's what I did in my last session with when I deal with people. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But I
So with
think
you have them say it, but then maybe the added sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I don't have them take part in it in front of me. I tell them when you have after the session, find the inner child in you and nurture that inner child. But then there's something
This is
you're
the next step. This
okay.
is it.
Okay.
You're gonna I want you to like I'm like, I want you to do this. I'm sorry. No, I'm being
Right.
like forceful. I'm like, I want you to do this. I feel like this is what you need to do. I feel like this is that next step. It's getting them to participate in it, while you're doing it. It's getting them to be a participant and doing it with you.
Okay.
You see?
All right.
And I
Okay.
feel like you'll have and then when they start participating, you'll start noticing you're gonna start seeing even more. It's gonna really pull into you're gonna be like, holy moly.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's sort of like, in the beginning, I didn't know that I could ask questions. Like I didn't know I could ask spirit questions. It was like I was just kind of sitting there waiting for them to tell me stuff. And I'm like, and so one of my friends was like, you can ask them questions. I'm like, I can? They're like, yeah, you should ask them questions. So I'm like, I had no idea. So they're like, okay, well, when you see they show you, I don't know, they show you a red car. You ask them, okay, well, whose red car is that? Or do you know what I mean? It's like ask questions. I was
Right.
just like, all right, well, I see a red car. Well, whose red car? I don't know. Well, I gotta ask them, and see what they give me next. And so it's like, and then once I started doing that, then I started really having this larger picture. And I'm like, oh my gosh, everything just became so much more clear and just pulled together. And I was like, holy moly. So I almost feel like it's that. So you have a beautiful, amazing gift already. And I feel like this is your way of like leveling up. And that's what your guide is saying. He's like, okay, you're going to level up now. So now you're really going to, it's almost like you're going to focus in even more. And you're going to be like, oh my goodness. But I
So
feel like it's like that with our gifts in general, right?
yes.
You always
Yes.
feel like they're always evolving and they're
Well,
always
I like what you said regarding the questions because in terms of like my doing like for you for example as a psychic, most people want to ask yes or no questions. They want to hear, will I be married? Yes or no. Will I get that car? Yes or no. Will I get that house? To some extent or
yeah.
no? No.
No, I don't do yes or no's.
Okay,
I
but
I always
most people want yes or no answers to to satisfy their ego. They want to feel they got something that made them feel like positive or whatever. They don't want to hear these. Sometimes they're scared of the
I could see
explanation.
that.
Yeah, I think they're scared of
Yeah,
the
I could see that.
explanation.
Okay, I could see that. Yeah, 100%. I could see that.
Yeah. So for example, just when I do an Akashic record reading, I'm telling the people to prepare questions prior to the reading with what they need to do in terms of what they're asking or how they need to. The question should come in the form of how do I do that or what do I need to do, like for this relationship to work. Because I find that when that happens, I receive answers on a higher vibrational level. Where when you said you communicate and ask questions, I'm asking those questions on behalf of the person, and the information comes to me in the form of a clearer answer.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So I'm taking the advice you gave me, which is inspiring for me, and I like that because I like to hear things I can do to change and to grow, and in spite of
Mhm.
and so I think that's the inspirational work that you do of giving people the insight and also the tools to then change and make their lives more positive. So I think it's very inspirational. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
I'm like, oh, that I'm glad. I'm happy to hear that. I think with you, I could see you're very special. I think you have a beautiful gift, and yeah, I feel like you've helped a lot of people, and I feel like you're going to continue to help a lot of people. And yeah, I don't know. Just wanted
thank
to
you.
say that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're
And I find
welcome.
your work to be inspirational as well in terms of what you're doing and the ability to share your honesty, which is important, and being genuine and not caring what other people think and being at peace with oneself of the work one does. And that's important. At the end of the day, when a person can look themselves in the mirror and feel complete about themselves is a rewarding feeling. Um,
100%. Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with in terms of any type of message from the spirit world or from yourself, from your own insight of what we can do going forward with our lives to make our lives more positive?
To make our lives more positive, what everyone could do, it's very simple. Well, it sounds simple. Sometimes things are easier said than done. But just start off every morning with just, giving yourself one positive thing that you love about yourself, affirmations. I love that. Or even just simply saying, today will be a good day. Today is going to be a great day. Um, yeah, I think that's important. Just waking up and acknowledging today's another day and it's going to be a great day. No matter what happens, it's going to be a great day.
Right, right,
So
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I'm a big fan of just, I've been very into lately more so than ever, but manifesting and just being very mindful of the words that we speak because it's natural, right? We're human. I catch myself too. There's days where I'm like, something doesn't go exactly the way that I had planned it to go. And I'm like, nothing ever, I'm like, everything always works.
yeah,
Just,
the power of manifesting words. It's very difficult for people to change their behavior because sometimes people feel they're more comfortable in that mindset. They don't think they have the power to change their lives with manifesting thoughts and words and actions. But then again, our thoughts, our actions, our words is what manifests our future. So it's so important for us to be on board as individuals to know that the, I guess the secret, as they say. Um, if somebody were
yeah.
interested in getting a reading from you, where could they reach you at?
So you could go to my website, which is Laura Cifaldi, NewJerseyMedium.com, and you could book something right directly on my website.
Okay.
I'm also on Instagram at Laura_Cifaldi, and they can find me there as well, and it'll direct you right to my website as well. So
Okay. Well,
right
on that,
now I was having some issues with I guess, right, I don't know if you noticed this, but the spiritual realm is being attacked by, well, not attacked, but a lot of scammers have been on,
yes.
taking over people's accounts. Have you noticed that? It
Yes, I
seems like
have.
a
I
lot of
know a woman,
people,
yes.
yeah, a lot of people that have been happening to. So somebody made a duplicate page of mine. It's going to be resolved very shortly, but someone made a duplicate page of mine. So that, so just, make sure that it's my
Yes, yes.
page. So
Legit.
it's the one underscore.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll put all that information on the description and on the video when I finish. All right.
Awesome.
I want to thank you for joining me today. It was inspirational to have someone share the information to help people evolve, to find people that have passed on, to pass the information on to loved ones, and to be able to be an empathetic person and be able to use it in a positive way rather than in a destructive way.
Yeah.
So
Well,
many
thank you
people,
so much for having me. Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank
What were you
you.
going to say?
Thank you. Thank you, Laura.